In our previous book of records, we already covered the fastest and the most well-armored tanks, the most powerful guns, and the most devastating munitions available in the game. At the end of the day, though, all of that was just equipment and hardware created by some extremely talented people. And today, instead of talking about specific vehicles, we're going to talk about the most notable advances in military technology used to produce ground vehicles. Who made the first MBT? Who created the first night vision devices? What was the deal with the smoothbore gun of the T-62? Let's go! The person credited for the invention of the first infrared video camera is Kálmán Tihanyi, a Hungarian scientist. He filed his first patent application at the age of 16 and is responsible for a lot of advances in the field of electronic engineering by creating the first ever plasma display and even the world's first automatic pilotless aircraft. By the 1930s, he's, just like many other scientists in Germany, the US, the USSR, and Great Britain, was experimenting with infrared devices. But when it came to using IR technologies in tanks, the first big success was achieved by AEG, a German producer of electrical equipment that developed the night vision device called smoothbore, which was used on some Panthers. Some of the latest Panther tanks even had night vision devices for the driver. But it was just the beginning. Many years later, the US rolled out the M60A3 TTS tank, the first combat vehicle featuring thermal sights. While night vision devices have to rely on nearby visible light to work properly, thermal imaging does not need any light to function. It uses infrared sensors to detect sources of heat and can be used both day and night. By the way, the M60 and the M48 were the first tanks fitted with yet another novelty: reactive armor. The Israel Defense Forces made full use of the findings of a German scientist called Manfred Held and equipped their tanks with the brand new Blazer explosive reactive armor. It proved its worth in battle and eventually became an integral part of the standard MBT package. American tankers were also the first to enjoy the advantages of having a gun stabilizer. The iconic M4 Sherman was one of the most produced and easily producible vehicles of the early World War II years, and yet it was equipped with a one-axis stabilizer. It used a gyroscope and hydraulic power pulled from the turret drive system to keep the gun steady, but the stabilization was only in the vertical plane. Quite impressive nonetheless. The first ever main battle tank was created in Britain. The development began in 1943 as it became clear that the British needed a kind of universal design that wouldn't be like cruiser tanks that lacked armor or infantry tanks that lacked mobility. The engineering team behind the project had a powerful 17-pounder, the Rolls-Royce Meteor engine, lots of experience developing the Cromwell tank, and familiarity with the German Tiger and Panther designs. By combining all of that, the British created the Centurion tank that was ready for production just a year and a half later. At the time, it was sometimes considered a sort of interim vehicle. But as years went by, the tank turned out to be a lot more reliable than expected. And with the arrival of the L7 cannon, it became evident that the Centurion truly was the progenitor of the new class of vehicles that we know as the MBT. There are a few vehicles competing for the title of the world's first production IFV, but the most produced and the most well-known is the Soviet BMP-1, made by the Chelyabinsk Tractor Works. As early as the 1950s, the Soviet military recognized the need for a new type of transport for their mechanized infantry. What they had in mind was a highly mobile combat vehicle with fire support and anti-tank capabilities. To achieve that, the Soviet IFV was armed with the Grom smoothbore semi-automatic gun firing heat rounds, and with the Malyutka ATGM that could pierce the armor of any component at any time. Furthermore, the BMP-1 was made amphibious and had an NBC protection system on board. There are a few other notable Soviet achievements. For example, the USSR was the first country to use a tank with a high-caliber smoothbore tank gun, the T-62. The original plan was to make a medium tank with a regular 100mm cannon, but the engineering team decided to go with a smoothbore design, creating the U-5TS smoothbore gun that was more reliable and allowed the firing of heat rounds at higher velocities. Finally, the first ATGM system to become operational and to see combat was the French Nord SS-10. Its development started in 1948. Like a few other French designs of the time, the SS-10 was based on a German concept from World War II, namely the Ruhrstahl wire-guided anti-tank missile. The creator of that concept, Dr. Max Kramer, joined forces with the BMW company in an effort to create guided missiles that would be cheap to produce and easy to build. Allegedly, the missile had serious guidance-to-target issues, and it never entered service. The French were a lot more successful with their take. You can find one of the latest and the most advanced variants of their pioneering ATGM missile on the premium AMX-13 tank. What was once considered a massive technological breakthrough is often just a norm these days, with engineers around the globe constantly pushing for new heights. Unmanned turrets, new active and passive protection systems. The list is literally endless. And we'd like you to tell us in the comments below which breakthrough impressed you the most. Come on, do tell. We're listening and waiting.